So you've been playing the Hulk, you've been winning some and losing some, but you want to learn how to get better and how to become more impactful in your games. In this guide, we're going to teach you the skills and techniques that are utilized by the top end Hulks to make sure they fully impact their lobbies and are a menace on the battlefield. This is by no means a beginner guide, and if you're looking for beginner to Hulk or entry level Hulk stuff, check out our complete guide to Hulk first, understand the character a little bit better, and then come back here once you're learning how to up your game. Alright, so there's a lot of things going on with Hulk that once you change is going to drastically up how effective you are in the game. First up, and we talked about this a bit in the beginner's guide, is that you need to understand the maps and you need to be as mobile as possible. Always be jumping. A good Hulk is required to be flying across the battlefield, constantly engaging and disengaging and changing up where he's at. He should not be predictable, and he shouldn't be able to get locked down by enemy teams. You should be coming in, smashing into the enemy backline, and then leaping out before their full level of reaction is able to come to you. The benefit that you're providing for your team is you're pulling their focus away from the objective or what they're supposed to be paying attention to and forcing them to pay attention to you. Then you're getting out of there, breaking their attention again. The constant flip-flop of their focus is going to make it so they can't use all of their abilities on your team, and they can't use all their abilities on you, and that's going to ensure that both you survive and your team survives. Top-end Hulks are leaping into the fray constantly. They're constantly charging up their jump and then unleashing it when they see an opportunity to leap to a new target. As soon as they slam down and begin punching, their jump is already charging back up, and as soon as the enemy team turns to focus on them, they've already leapt out of that position. They might leap to another enemy who is off in the distance, separated from their team, they might leap back to their own team, they might leap onto the enemy tanks. It really depends on the current opening that's going on, but you want to be constantly looking around and prepared to leap out of where you're at. You never want to be caught with your pants down as Hulk, and you want to make sure that your jump is ready and available. Starting off on maps, you want to be leaping up to high points that you can get to and observing the terrain as quickly as possible, leaping back and forth, and constantly making sure your enemies aren't sure what angle you're going to come in at them at. Pay attention to what your vanguard and your strategists are up to. If your strategists have become engaged by an enemy diver, you're leaping back to them, using your abilities to lock down that diver and protecting your teammates with your bubble. If your allied tank is ready to push in and engage and your team is ready to follow in, fly in from a different angle. You should be leaping in as soon as the enemy team has begun throwing shots at your allies, making sure that they don't have everything immediately available to handle you. You slam down and begin laying into their backline. If you don't immediately see an opening to get a kill, you're jumping to another target, hitting them for a bit, then jumping back, leaping around and constantly causing them to change their focus. At any point that the focus comes in on you and your health starts to become an issue, you're going to want to look for an opening to either leap to your friends and be able to receive healing again, or to leap to somewhere that has a health pack. Knowing where the health packs are is really important, and you're going to want to focus on jumping to areas that have these health options to be able to pick up and get yourself healing constantly. You can tuck out of a fight for a moment, grab a health pack, and jump right back in pretty easily and still maintain almost full efficiency. Where if you have to leap back to your allies and wait for them to heal you, you're often going to allow the enemy team to focus in where you don't want their shots going, at your teammates. So the first new skill that you have to implement into your games is to just start jumping more. At the start, you're going to be making a lot of bad jumps, and that's fine. You need to learn how and when to jump, but you're going to have to be jumping to get a feel for when the right moment is. A lot of players recommend going into the settings, going down, and turning off hold the jump. This turns your jump into a toggle. If you're standing still and you hit the jump key, you begin charging up your jump instead of immediately jumping. And then if you hit it again, you can leap at your current charged up level. I don't really like doing this. I prefer to have more control over my jumping, and I like to leave it on hold the jump, but I pretty much spend the whole game with my spacebar held down, only releasing it when I want to do a specific leap. In conjunction with this, you should always be punching. Just hold your attack down and just be punching the sky non-stop. If you watch the top end players, Celestial level, one above all levels, playing Hulk, they're just punching all the time, and you want to be doing the same. This ensures that anytime you get your hands on a target, you're dealing the maximum amount of damage possible because you're already swinging. Even as leaping through the air, you should be swinging. In case you fly past a target, you can get a bit of free damage on, and you're starting to immediately deal your damage as soon as you're within range of your target. The only time you don't want to be auto-punching is if you're intentionally exiling a target. Your exile is actually the reason why Hulk is one of the top tanks, and this skill alone is what keeps Hulk relevant. So you want to be locking down targets that you don't want to be in the fight right now, or you want to be locking down targets that you want to catch up to and then take out. Those are the two primary uses, but they have a lot of leeway in them. Knowing when the enemy team has ultimates available and having this ready to shut that down is really good. You can lock down things like Spider-Man or Doctor Strange, Star-Lord, anybody that doesn't have CC immunity throughout their ultimate, you can lock them down and make them lose their ultimate, or at least a huge chunk of the potential of it. Now this doesn't come up all the time, and you shouldn't just be holding your Exile to lock those targets down. You're going to be wanting to use it to identify targets that you need out of the fight, and then to remove them from the fight. If you've leapt onto the enemy backline and there's two healers in front of you, exiling one of them and then laying into the other healer is one of the only ways you're actually going to be able to get a kill. If the two healers are focusing on each other, you're not going to do enough damage to take one out. But you can force them to panic by locking one down and then getting the other significantly low. That's going to cause the low HP healer to begin fleeing, as well as the exiled healer, once the exile ends, is going to then try and focus on saving the other healer. They might be successful in that, and that's fine. You don't necessarily have to get the kill. What you just did is you distracted both of the healers. Now, your team plowing into their tanks, there's nobody backing their tanks up. This should give your team an advantage and the ability to push up. Your team gaining momentum from you being there is the objective of this maneuver. You're not necessarily there to get kills. Although kills are great. Once you've locked down the healers and distracted them, there should be a call in to focus in on you, and you should notice the enemy DPS have turned their focus towards you, and probably the enemy tanks have disengaged. At that point is when you're going to be wanting to jump out and potentially bubbling yourself. Your bubble needs to be used in several different situations. It's again a really potent tool, but it's not used correctly by most Hulks. You don't often want to be using this just to absorb a little bit of damage in a brawl. That's the weakest use of this ability. Though not necessarily always the worst option, there's usually a more important usage. Number one is the negation of ultimates. If like a Doctor Strange has leapt up and is about to ult into your team, or an Iron Man is unleashing a maximum pulse, leaping into your allies and putting out your bubble is going to save everyone. And that's a huge playmaker. Removal of ultimates, of course, is one of the strongest things you can do in the game because ultimates are really the game changers and what flip fights. Any ultimate you can stop is key. Next up is CC negation. The bubble stops anybody with it active on them from being CC'd, and you're going to want to utilize this to save yourself or your allies from powerful enemy abilities. If you're leaping into the enemy team and you see that they have an Emma Frost, you need to be ready to pop your bubble as soon as she goes diamond form. Because she is going to be looking to diamond form choke slam you and then slam you into a wall and let your team melt you while you're CC'd for a long period of time. If you can get her bubble off before her choke slam can come in, you negate one of her most powerful abilities and you make it so that she can no longer lock you down. Then continue your jumping about, distracting the enemy team and harassing the backliners. Noticing things like the enemy team's cloak and dagger looking to make your team vulnerable, or any other status effect that's coming out from the enemy team towards yours, and negating it with your bubble is going to be one of the key skills to get better and better. And holding your bubbles for moments that you can predict when these kind of crowd controls are likely to be coming out is one of the key skills to get better at this game in general. So what you're going to be doing as soon as you start leaping at the start of the game, analyze who you're up against. Pay attention to what characters are in the enemy lineup, and think about how your bubble is going to come into play here. You need to know who your main exile targets are and how you're going to bubble in every fight. And you shouldn't just be using these abilities at will. So now you've learned jumping into the enemy team and being less predictable, locking down priority enemies with an exile, leaving them out of the fight, and protecting yourself and your allies with your bubble. Upping your effectiveness with each of these three skills is really important. So now let's talk about his Monster Hulk ultimate. Most average Hulks basically just use his ultimate as a big soak of HP. Leaping into the enemy team, turning into Monster Hulk, and then absorbing a bunch of incoming damage with your massive new health pool. The pro tanks are still doing this, but they're also being extremely effective against the enemy team with the new ability set that comes with Monster Hulk. There are a couple of combos that you can perform while in your ultimate form, and you should be aware of these and be ready to actually execute on them in your games. First up is technically your fastest kill. Clap, exile, clap. Comboing your clap and exile as quickly as you can onto a single target will chunk them for over half their health and then exile them. While they're exiled, they can't move and they can't receive any healing. Then you get up close to them and you clap again. The second Monster Hulk clap will do enough damage to kill the target and take them out before they can receive any healing. If you can perform this fast enough, you can even do this inside an enemy healer ultimate, where if you clap an Exile really quickly, get up close and clap them to death, they'll die before they receive the instant healing from the ultimate. There's also an animation cancel. With your basic and clap at the same time, you can get it really close together to be able to do basic clap and chunk a target. This is often the better option to do when you're trying to take out a target that is being pocketed by healing or within a healing ultimate. If you can damage them, exile them, get up close, and then basic and clap them, breaking them out of exile with that quick combo of damage, you're much more likely to successfully take the target out. You don't want to use this basic clap combination if you're trying to juggle the target. Juggling is where you're going to be mealing them in the Monster Hulk form, and each of your hits knocks them upwards and away. After 2 hits, you knock them high enough up that you can do your incredible leap, grab them, and slam them down on the ground. And then if they're still alive, like they're a tank or they're getting pocketed, you can again knock them up twice and then leap at them again. This is juggling the target around, and is another concept that you need to be topping into the practice range and figuring out how to do it. Spawn a Groot at a location and play around with juggling him about. Try and get used to getting him up in the air high enough so that you can jump tackle him, and get used to that continued play of double hit, jump, tackle, slam, clap, double hit, jump, tackle, slam. You should be able to perform a couple of these per Monster Hulk if you need to be juggling targets, and being able to do it effectively is important. You are extremely vulnerable to crowd control when you're in your Monster Hulk form, and when you're in your regular Hulk form in general. Crowd control is your nemesis, and you're going to need to play around the fact that your enemies might be able to lock you down. You don't want to just leap into entire enemy groups and then turn into Monster Hulk, get locked down, melted out, and reverted back to Bruce Banner before you can do anything effective. Make sure your team is ready to help you out, and you're ready to engage on targets that aren't going to be able to immediately handle you in this form. Also in Monster Hulk form, you can knock enemies out of powerful healing ultimates. If a healing ultimate is going on in the area, you're able to use your knockback to knock targets out of the effective range of that heal, and then use all of your lockdown and powers to take the target out before the healer is able to get that healing sphere to them if it's a mobile one, or before they're able to get back into the healing range. These high-end Hulks, if you're watching them, are leaping into enemy teams, clapping across as many targets as they can to get that spread of damage, as well as focusing the main target of the clap on the most vulnerable target in the area. It's not necessarily the target closest to them, and it's definitely not the tanks very often. So much of this game is getting the right amount of damage at the right time to take a target down, and you're going to want to be using your clap to help you get that objective in. Another optimization skill to learn is the Bunnyhop. The Bunnyhop is a special skill that you can use to get a little bit more distance out of each of your jumps. After you've used your incredible leap, when you hit the ground, if you jump again at the right time, you do a quick bounce and you gain another set of distance. Being able to utilize this to bounce out of fights or to bounce to a target that usually you wouldn't have been able to successfully engage onto is where this comes into play. Practicing this takes a lot of work. It's not something you're going to execute correctly all the time. Even the top end players are often messing up the hop, but you're going to want to hop into the practice range and start trying to get it off. If you're on PC, hop into your settings and go to both Hulk and Monster Hulk, and add a secondary binding for jump to mouse wheel down. This will allow you to do a quick mouse wheel down at the end of your jump, and it should make it more often that you successfully bunny hop. If you're not jumping to your allies to protect them in critical moments, you're not tanking. You're just a DPS, and that's not your job. You are a vanguard, and it is your job to protect your team. Sure, diving into the enemy team, distracting, and pulling focus towards yourself is a great way to protect your allies. But if you are never actually moving in to help your allies, and your allies are in danger, you've just messed up. And this is one of the biggest mistakes we see from the dive-style tanks, is that they think because they're a dive-style tank, they always have to be in the enemy lines, and that's just not true. All characters should be able to spend some time with their allies, and if the enemy team's divers are effective, you want to make sure that you are helping mitigate that problem to make sure you win the game. Where were my heals is a question you should never ask as the Hulk. If there was an engagement that you went into and you died because you didn't get healing, well, that was a mistake you just made. You either jumped in at the wrong time, jumped into the wrong amount of people, didn't charge up your ultimate to escape, didn't use your shield. Some kind of mistake occurred on your part that made it so that you didn't escape effectively. Not receiving healing is not a thing that happens to pro Hulks. They always know how to get their healing. They're getting to the right position to receive their healing, or they're picking up health packs and getting themselves to safety. Put that into your brain and keep it there. It is your job to keep yourself safe, and for the most part, your strategists are going to be working on healing the other tank that is taking the brunt of the enemy force, or healing each other who are taking chunk damage from the enemy team. Any healing you get from your allies is a bonus for you, unless you've jumped to them to help protect them, and then at that point, it is their responsibility to help keep you alive because you're helping keep them alive. So we went over a lot of things today, and there's a lot of new information hopefully for you to understand and think more about when you're playing this character. The character is really complicated, hard to play well, and he doesn't have the same effective curve of the other tanks, and you need to play a little bit differently to play him effectively. Once you get used to playing Hulk well, he is a menace, and your enemy team is going to have a really hard time dealing with you. You're going to be able to smash into their ranks, decimate their backline, and protect your allies all at the same time. And I really think he's a character that's a lot of fun to play, and I wish more players played him a little bit better, which is why I made this guide. I hope with everything you gain from this guide, you're going to be able to play better in your games as Hulk. I'm Zesty Fresh from Sazaza Games, and we'll catch you guys next time. Sazaze.